Conditions May Apply by CinnamonPinecones. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 161. Cool Down. Hizashi didn't know his heart could break this much. This poor kid. This poor kid. He thought they wouldn't still love him this whole time. Did he even know that they loved him? He doubted it after everything that happened today. Izuku was sobbing silently into his own hands, and Hizashi wanted to pull him against his chest and tell him how much they loved him. But that would be too much right now. He knew it would. They would have time to make sure he knew he was loved. Loved however he was. Loved no matter what. Loved without conditions, but now was not the time. All of a sudden, Izuku stopped crying and his breaths went from hitched on every other inhale to perfectly regular and calculated. He didn't stop shaking, though. If anything, it had gotten worse, and his hands were clenched hard enough for his knuckles to blanch. Izuku? Are you all right? He asked hesitantly. They didn't normally call him by his given name, but Shota had mentioned that it had garnered a bit more of a reaction when he was like this in the past. Even still, he didn't respond at all, and Hizashi doubted that he even heard them. He just shuffled away from them and stood up, heedless of Kimchi still sitting on his lap. Shit, he must really be out of it. He would never do that to Kimchi if he had his wits about him, even though she was only mildly disturbed by the ordeal at worst. Izuku? He asked again cautiously. Again, he was ignored as Izuku walked away stiffly. They glanced over to Shota to see if he had any idea what to do, but his eyes were following the kid intently. He looked concerned and guilty and angry all at once. As Izuku made his way out of the living room, both he and Shota stood to follow. Shota just watched as Izuku pulled his shoes on and made for the door. Sweetheart, I don't think you should go out like this. It's not safe. We don't know. Shota cut him off with a hand on his shoulder. He looked like he had a plan, so Hizashi let him take the lead. There was still daylight for a few hours yet. Going out may not have been advisable, but the kid was capable, and Shota knew that far better than they did. Wait, Izuku, Shota said calmly. He walked over to him, and Izuku just stood there, brows drawn, jaw clenched, and fists trembling. Can I see your phone? He asked, holding his hand out. Izuku didn't respond. He looked down to Shota's hand, but he clearly hadn't understood the request because he just kept staring blankly. He had to ask a few more times before Izuku handed the device over. Thank you, Shota replied as he started tapping away at the screen. Izuku tried to turn and leave, but Shota just placed a hand on his shoulder gently to stop him. I'm sharing your location with us, okay? You can turn it off when you get back, he explained as he handed the phone back to Izuku. Izuku looked at the screen for far longer than it would usually take for someone to absorb what they were seeing, but eventually he tucked the phone into his pocket and looked back up at them. His brows weren't as furrowed as they had been, and tears had filled his eyes once more. He looked between the two of them for a moment, but didn't say anything before he turned around and left, closing the door gently behind himself. The second the door shut, he saw Shota's head drop. He looked to the ground, carted a hand through his hair, and took a few deep breaths before turning around. He opened his mouth like he was going to speak, before shaking his head and walking back into the living room wordlessly. Hizashi joined him, and they sat in silence for a moment before Shota spoke. Well, that couldn't have gone much worse, he remarked. He'll come back, Hizashi tried to reassure, though he couldn't bring himself to disagree. Couldn't have gone much worse than it did. Seemed to be just how this kid's life operated. I know he'll come back. But What the hell are we supposed to do when he does? Shota replied. Same as we have been. Just be there for him. Zosh, he called himself. We can't just not address that. That's not what I meant, Sho. You're right. We can't just let that slide, but bringing it up with him is not what he needs right now. That can wait. The past isn't going anywhere. The school's already under investigation anyway, and between you and Sansa, no crime is going to be going unpunished. But retribution isn't what Izuku needs right now. He needs us to be here for him. He needs reassurance. He needs to know that he's loved both how he is and how he used to be. Hizashi clarified. I know, Shota trailed off. Yeah, I know, they agreed, not waiting for him to finish. The tired hopelessness in Shota's eyes spoke more than any sentence he might have been able to string together anyway. When Izuku finally got his wits about him, he took in his surroundings. He was on the rooftop where he and Eraser had first met. The sun was setting. He must have been here for a while already. He looked down at the drop below his feet, at the pavement so far away. The same patch of pavement he had had countless nightmares about Eraser's dead body splattering against. Why the hell was he here? He forced his eyes off of the sidewalk below and looked out over the city. It was fairly calm. Eraser was taking good care of this place. There wasn't much of a breeze today, and the summer heat was getting to him now that he finally tuned back into himself. But the sun was going down. It would get cooler soon, so he stayed where he was. He didn't know where else to go anyway. He felt hollow. His anger was a gentle simmering in the background of his mind, but that was normal. He could ignore it. He needed to focus on damage control anyway. All Might was going to have questions. Izuku owed him answers, but what the hell was he supposed to say? Hey, yeah, I almost killed myself several times the day we met, and it was kind of partially because of you, but that's okay. People outright told me to kill myself constantly, so don't worry about it. Oh, and also, I was kind of a vigilante for like 3.5 years, and I've lied to you pretty much every time we have ever spoken to each other. Hope that's chill. Yeah, that wouldn't go over well. All Might had been honest to a fault with him since they met, and Izuku had done nothing but lie to him for over a year now. He felt sick. The fact that his gaze had returned to the patch of concrete beneath him probably wasn't helping that much, so he turned his head toward the sky. There weren't many clouds out, but the sunset still tinged the atmosphere with gentle tones of peach and lavender. With all of the earth-shattering things that had happened to him lately, he felt like it shouldn't. Like the sky should be green and yellow in solidarity with all this shit that's been happening. Life goes on, he supposed. He just had to figure out how he was supposed to go on. Something he was getting rather tired of having to do. He wished things were different. He wished that everything didn't have to come crashing down in order to be rebuilt. He wished he hadn't snapped like he had, and he wished he wasn't so damn tired. He was tired of breaking, and he was tired of being broken, and he was tired of piecing himself back together, and he was tired of waiting for the next wrecking ball to hit, and he was tired of ending up looking over the ledge of a rooftop like this. He was tired of being this alone. But he supposed that wasn't the case anymore, whether he liked it or not. He wasn't alone anymore. What a novel thought. Hitoshi, heard a knock on the door at 8:57 p.m., which was not exactly peak visitor hours around here. His mom was in the shower, and he contemplated ignoring it, but a voice in his head that sounded suspiciously like Aizawa told him that if it was a threat, he'd be better off more informed rather than caught off guard. So he quietly made his way down the stairs. He recognized the blurry spot of green hair through the frosted glass illuminated by the porch light, and his shoulders dropped with relief, quickly. However, they were just as tense as they had been by the time he made it to the door. There was no way Izuku would be here unannounced at this time with good news. He checked through the peephole to make sure that he was seeing what he thought he saw, and, as was to be expected, Izuku was standing there looking distressed. He wasted no time in swinging the door open at the sight. I cussed out All Might and Eraserhead and President Mike, Izuku said the moment his eyes locked on Hitoshi's. He didn't mean to laugh. Izuku was clearly upset about whatever had happened, but it was just so absurd that he couldn't help himself. He knew Izuku had a bit of a darker side. He'd heard him swear from time to time, but usually his vocabulary was far kinder and purer than most teenage boys. Izuku cussing out anyone besides himself was something Hitoshi found difficult to imagine. And All Might, of all people? Go big or go home, he supposed. Don't laugh, Izuku whinged. I'm not. Oh, okay, I am. But how else am I supposed to respond to that? He shot back. Izuku groaned and let his shoulders slump in defeat. Come inside. You sound like you have a story, he replied a little more sympathetically. Don't. I can't even tell you what happened. I don't know why I'm here. I just come inside. He interrupted Izuku's rambling by grabbing a fistful of his shirt and pulling him past the threshold. Thankfully, he didn't object to it. He just slid his feet out of his shoes and into his designated house slippers. Hitoshi beckoned him up the stairs and to his room. He'd tell his mom that he was here, if she didn't already know, when she got out of the shower. So, is there any elaboration you can give, or... He trailed off. Hitoshi had to stifle another laugh when he turned around after shutting his door because Izuku appeared to be doing his best to melt into the foot of his bed face first. They all know everything now, Izuku replied, heavily muffled by the comforter beneath his face. Oh, that's... He was going to say fine, but he stopped himself. Well, I'm guessing you're not happy about that. I don't... They weren't even mad. I don't understand. Decent people tend to cut others a break when they've been through hell, he explained. That's not... I don't mean the... He grumbled into the bedding before he sat up for a proper response. He was still at the foot of the bed, but now he was facing Hitoshi as he leaned his back against the wall. His eyes were darting around, not really focusing on anything, and his brow had a deep furrow into it, like he was thinking hard about something. Hitoshi pulled his desk chair over and took a seat while Izuku gathered his thoughts. He wished that he could just tell him everything that was going on. Getting half of the story was confusing, and his curiosity was getting more and more difficult to ignore with each nugget of information Izuku let slip. I don't know what to do, Izuku admitted. I don't know what to tell you if I don't actually know what's going on. He did his best to subtly probe for more information. I can't tell you, Izuku replied mournfully. I don't know why they want me to see a shrink. I can't tell them anything either. So is it like legal trouble? He hedged. Izuku sighed heavily. It's a lot. Don't even know how I got myself into so many messes. Well, I do, but they all know about my work, about how it was less than functional. He paused before he finished his thought. They don't care. They wouldn't have cared, just like you said. And I just, I didn't have to. The B alone was left unsaid, but it hung heavily in the air. And All Might doesn't actually know everything, just that there's more that he doesn't know. And now I have to tell him. Why do you have to tell him? He interrupted the spiral he saw coming on. He, lied to him. He deserves to know, Izuku insisted. No one deserves to know anything that you don't want to tell them, he argued. The irony of that assertion coming from him, of all people, was not lost on him. I need to tell him. He knows the worst of it already. Probably. I guess that's a matter of perspective. Izuku mused aloud. Maybe you could write him a letter instead, he offered. Izuku gave him a strange look at that suggestion. Don't look at me like that. It's a perfectly normal thing to do, and you write constantly anyways. Shit's difficult enough to talk about. That might make it easier. He defended his stance. I'm tired of all the lying coming back to bite me. Serves me right, I guess. Izuku answered with resignation. The only thing that would serve you right is winning the lottery and retiring at 17. Stop blaming yourself for everything. He shot back. How is getting caught in my own web of lies not my fault? Izuku asked, sounding as tired as he looked, which was to say, extremely. Well, what the hell else were you supposed to do, Izuku? Expecting you to trust anyone after everything that happened is a tall order. You have a damn villain origin story, you know? Honestly, everyone should be grateful you're not dismantling Japan entirely, unless that's the long con. You're not just becoming a hero so you can tear it all down from the inside, are you? He poked at him in an effort to lift the mood. He smirked and just rolled his eyes. I wouldn't tell you if that was my plan, would I? As long as you remember we were tight and I have a good gig in your new world order, then my lips are sealed. He joked in mind, zipping his lips shut and throwing away the key. Izuku chuckled at him, but his expression went back somber and exhausted quickly. All Might has done a lot for me. He stayed with me in the hospital after the USJ. Lied to him so much. I lied to him like I lied to you, and he saved my life several times over, and I never, I still don't understand why you forgave me. Izuku explained a little bit more. Huh. Well, that explained why those two were so buddy-buddy. That was something he had been wondering. But in the grand scheme of shit going on in Izuku's life, his relationship with All Might wasn't high on Hitoshi's list of concerns. Well, what else was I supposed to do? Stay angry? That doesn't sound very fun. He answered easily. He's not angry, though. He blames himself, or at least I think he does. Mike and Eraser blame him, but it was my fault. I'm the one who lied. It's not his fault for believing me, Izuku insisted. Hitoshi did his best to ignore the part of himself that was relieved that Izuku had managed to pull the wool over All Might's eyes. His instinct was to say that All Might should have known better, but that wasn't fair. If he said that about All Might, he would have to say that about his mom, too. The truth of the matter was Izuku was a damn good liar, far better than he had any right to be. So much so that he was hesitant to say that it was All Might's fault for not looking into things more than he did. He didn't know enough to say anything with any amount of certainty, and he knew Izuku wouldn't want to hear empty platitudes. I don't know what to tell you, he decided to say honestly. Izuku sighed and looked down at his lap before replying with a weary, I know. Kohaku knew the second Midoriya made his way to their front door. Given that she could feel him get closer, she assumed Toshi let him in. Generally, she couldn't track people based off their emotions, but she could recognize people she was closest to with fairly good reliability. The jumbled mess of emotions that was almost impossible to parse out was Midoriya through and through. That, and she couldn't imagine Toshi would so calmly let anyone else into their house. Her suspicions were confirmed when she walked past Toshi's door and heard them talking. She didn't stay to eavesdrop, just enough to make sure she was right before she sounded the alarms. Toshi seemed surprised to see him, so she presumed this wasn't a planned visit. Shinso Kohaku, 9:14 p.m. I've got a stowaway here. Are you missing a stray? Aizawa answered her almost immediately. Aizawa, 9:14 p.m. I know, he needed some air, but he's sharing his location. Do you need me to come pick him up? That was a worried dad response if she ever saw one. She wondered how he was doing with all of this. Sure, it was hard on Midoriya, but suddenly being a parent or guardian to a severely traumatized teenager couldn't be easy on Aizawa, especially with all the trouble he seemed to get himself into. Shinso Kohaku, 9:15 p.m. No, he's always welcome here. I really do mean that. I might as well give him a spare key. Smiley face. Aizawa, 9:20 p.m. Thank you. He hasn't had dinner. Can I order some takeaway to you? Aw, that was so thoughtful. Whether or not Aizawa felt like he had a grip on the situation, he seemed to be doing a good job of making sure that kid was well cared for. Lord knows he needed it. Shinso Kohaku, 9:21 p.m. I can feed him. Don't worry about it. Aizawa, 9:22 p.m. Thanks. Is he doing all right? He was in a bad state when he left. She took a moment to tune back into what was going on in Toshi's room. They both seemed to have settled down a bit, but Midoriya still wasn't happy. Shinso Kohaku, 9:24 p.m. He feels frustrated and sad. Nothing too volatile, at least not for him. I haven't seen him yet. Toshi let him in when I was in the shower, and they're still talking in his room. Is there anything I should know? Aizawa, 9:30 p.m. There's not much I can tell you. A bunch of new information just came to light, things he would have liked to keep buried. It's for the best, or at least it will be. Oh, good Lord, how many secrets did this kid have? She sincerely hoped that this was the end of it and all the cards were out on the table. Toshi said he was seeing a counselor now, so it was a good time for it, to get everything sorted out before it started to stagnate and rot. She hoped Aizawa was handling that situation carefully. She knew he was a big softy under everything, but that didn't mean he had tact. Not for the first time, she wished she knew more so she could help more. Shinso Kohaku, 9:32 p.m. Toshi said you had him seeing a therapist? Aizawa, 9:33 p.m. Not yet, but it's in the works. He's not happy about it. She huffed out a laugh at that as she made her way down to the kitchen to start heating up some leftovers. Kohaku took a moment while the microwave whirred to think about what she wanted to say. She knew she had no right to any withheld information, but she wanted to help both of them so desperately. She remembered going through this stage of trauma with Toshi. It was a difficult thing to do alone, especially when she was working through it herself. Her friends had been there, but that wasn't the same as a spouse. Eraser had someone, she knew that, but she didn't know who they were or how much they were helping him with this. Shinso Kohaku, 9:35 p.m. Yes, I imagine he wouldn't be. I know the situation isn't the same, but it's similar enough to what Toshi went through. I had him see a therapist for a few years, mostly against his will. So if you wanted to talk to someone who even vaguely understands what's going on, I've got your back. There. Hopefully that was enough of an olive branch for him to hang on to. The microwave beeped and she stirred around the curry she'd made earlier before sticking it back in for another cycle. She threw a cup of rice into the rice cooker and tried not to stare at the 3 dots on her phone that kept popping up and going away. The food was ready by the time Aizawa replied. Aizawa, 9:55 p.m. We might have to take you up on that offer. Oh, that was promising. Just the thought of being able to help was enough to ease the tension in her shoulders. Also, in the privacy of her mind, she would admit she was more than a little curious about Aizawa's other half. She assumed the situation was kept under wraps for their safety, since being a hero could be dangerous work, so she hadn't asked, but she was tempted. Shinso Kohaku, 9:56 p.m. I'm out of work before you are. Pick a time and I'll make it happen. I've got to get some food into your fugitive now, so we can iron out the details later. She typed out a reply before calling the boys down. She hoped she wasn't being too pushy. She had a feeling all of them had a few things they would like to get off their chests. Izuku knew he should have gone back home. He knew that Mike and Eraser were probably worried, even if they knew where he was, but he didn't have the stomach to face them right now. As he stared up at Hitoshi's ceiling in the dark, he tried his best to think more objectively about the situation. Logically, he knew that they all cared about him. He knew that All Might cared even though he was quirkless. But All Might had an insider perspective on that. Even if his life hadn't panned out exactly like Izuku's had, he knew what it was like to be like that. He was bound to have some empathy, but Mike, Eraser, and the Shinsos were never quirkless. It didn't make sense that they would still care about him. No one who knew what he was had ever cared about him before, All Might. So why were they different? Because they're not quirkless assholes, the Eraser in his brain supplied. He instinctively went to shove the thought away, to not give in to that treacherous hope. But there really was no other explanation. They cared about him. The actual him. They genuinely cared about him, quirkless and all. His mind tried to deny it still, saying it was just pity or them falling prey to sunk cost fallacies. But for the first time in his life, those voices weren't loud enough to drown out the all-consuming, deafening hope. The anger that had taken hold of him earlier did its best to rear its ugly head. It tried to fixate on all the time he spent alone for no reason other than his own cowardice, but he shushed it down and made a decision. That wasn't going to happen again. He wasn't going to miss out on whatever this was again. He had it now, and it was the most precious thing he had ever touched. It was terrifying, but in the darkness of his best friend's room, as Izuku laid awake next to his even breaths, he made the choice to trust. Everything was out on the table. There was nowhere left to hide. Losing this was going to tear him apart regardless of whether he fought it or not. So he might as well let it happen. End of chapter.